Dialogue. Dialogue, a presentation of the Public Affairs and Special Events Department of KLRB News.
This is Dialogue Assassination with research specialist Mae Brussell. For KLRB, I'm Gloria Barron. Well, Mae, this is Wednesday, and this Friday, you're appearing here tonight. This Friday, you'll be on Dick Bragg's program on KIDD, I understand, and that'll be from 7 to 8. So I wanted our listeners to know that it's sort of a continuing thing, I guess, between Dick and I.
Week, yes. Yeah.
And I know that he has given us credit quite a number of times.
You tell the listeners to turn on KLRB.
I did want them to know that you would be on KIDD on Friday night between 7 and 8, and that's sort of a question and answer period, isn't it?
Yes, Dick has a program called Hot Seat, and he has guests every night from 7 to 8, and this is the third week that I've been invited on, and I hope we can be able to keep this up, because any questions that people have or information they want me to look up, they can talk about on his show. You can write to KLRB or call them, or you can call direct in. I like the direct calls because, first of all, there's no preparation involved, and secondly, you can show how vast your research is because you can handle and throw out sources of information to look up. It's working very well.
Right. Now, today we're going to be talking about the Buckley article in last night's paper, the new Sputnik article, and let's see, Tom Wicker's article.
Well, we're going to take...
And also the Young Americans for Freedom.
That's right. We're going to take the format that we usually use, take the weekly or daily news, and this is what we try to do in this show. We're trying to show everybody who has listened in the past and continues to listen, and the new listeners, that what we're doing is taking the news each week as it comes along and analyzing it and showing how the news pertains to the political assassinations of the past and why the political assassinations are not a dead issue, that they're very much alive. And I would like people to take the program seriously, and I will give you sources of information to look up or books to read. And I want you to believe that something happened in our government in the 60s that started us on the road downhill in every single way that can be mentioned. And that I think I can take each one of these problems and say the cause of it was done by the political assassinations, by the power being usurped violently, and the people not knowing what's happening to themselves. And until they realize what has happened, they cannot halt all the violence or the street revolution or the future assassinations. And I think very seriously we are in a lot of trouble, and I wish people would continue to listen and tell their friends to listen and try to come with an open piece of mind, a clean piece of gray matter, and leave a little room for a new idea as I throw it out. And that's what we're going to talk about, political assassinations every week. Last night's paper in the Monterey Herald, many of you people can get that right now, still in your homes, around the kitchen or by the side of the furniture, and you can look up an article which you probably missed. I think a lot of people do not know how to read the paper yet, or what they're reading. The information that I get, a lot of my research is in the paper, and people do not appreciate that they could have that same information, and I want to interpret it for you, if I may. William Buckley has an article called Interview with Chew and Lie. And as a researcher in the Kennedy assassination, this is one of the most important articles, politically, historically, that I have had in 7 years. It begins to say, in quotes, in Latin America, particularly in Chile and Mexico, the rage is an interview that has just been published by a Mexican journalist between Julia Garcia and Chew and Lie. The editor-manager of the Excelsior, published in Mexico City, had spent 2.5 hours with Chew. It is a rich and long interview, full of interesting bits and pieces. Chew tells us, for instance, that the truth of the assassination of President Kennedy has not yet been revealed. End quotes. Now that coming out in the news media is terribly important, because I've been bringing in to the radio and reading sections for the last 3 weeks from an magazine called Sputnik that's published in the Soviet Union, and I brought with me a copy, August 1971, today. Now, the Western nations, our allies, Germany, France, Italy, Great Britain, none of the nations ever accepted the truth that John Kennedy was killed by Lee Harvey Oswald. They were told not to discuss it. They were threatened. They were threatened that foreign aid would be cut off. We put every pressure on them not to discuss the assassinations in this country. The Soviet Union knew that Oswald was an agent of the CIA while he was there for 2 years. They said it publicly at the time of the assassination, but they've been very, very quiet for 7 years. China has intelligence agents all over the world, certainly working with the Russians, certainly knowing what happened. But for the first time in 7 years, China is talking about the assassination of John Kennedy. Now, what is making the Soviet Union talk about this? Why is China talking about it? We are coming to a very important point historically. In 1972, in the United States of America, the government was overthrown, in my opinion, in 1963. But the pretending of having an election in 72 and going through the motions, we will nominate men like Richard Nixon, who was nominated before and won, and we will put in people who were knowledgeable or could expose the assassinations. If they weren't on the planning, John Connally and Richard Nixon, they could expose the truth. Spiro Agnew came in on the death of Martin Luther King. He worked closely with Robert Lally of the FBI. He was put in by the Papas Foundation, who told Richard Nixon to take him as vice president. If he wanted to run and have money for running the campaign, he would take Agnew. The Papas Foundation overthrew a democracy in Greece. We have spent lives, American lives, dollars, millions, billions of dollars going down the drain. We have done everything wrong in the last year since 1960 when President Kennedy was elected. He was not a saint. He was not perfect. But when the government was overthrown, we put so much money into arms and wasted our money, wasted our talent and our energy. Now we're coming to the point in 1972 that the Soviet Union and Chu and I know that we would be in very serious trouble if this team got into election again. Now, Gloria, we remember the very first program we talked about the Pentagon Papers, and I said the American government had one more thing to swallow besides the really hidden reasons why we went into Vietnam, the truth of the Kennedy murders and Martin Luther King and other political assassinations. Remember, I said this is the one thing we have to grow up and take.
Yes, you did say that on the first.
It was in June when we made our first tape, and this is the 13th of a series, and I was emphatic, and I said this is what we have to take. Now, if these nations, our so-called enemies as against our allies, are exposing how our government was usurped, they can blackmail us into any position. They can say, Richard Nixon, we want you to come to China. They can say, we want you not to bomb this area. They can put any terms they want on us, and we are a blackmailed nation, and we are living like blackmailed people. If we would only tell what everyone else in the world knows, they couldn't hold it over on us. But the public officials in power are not going to do that. It's up to the people. This is why we're on the air, to reach the people and make them realize that we are being blackmailed into foreign policies which make us embarrassed, make us a 10th-rate nation. Now, Mr. Buckley went on to say something else which was interesting. He talked about the decline of the British Empire, and he quoted Chu as saying this. He quotes Richard Nixon, rather, in Kansas City, who said, in quotes, the decline of the British Empire has proved the inadequacy of parliamentary democracy. Then he went on to say, even Nixon recognized on July the 6th, 1971, in a press conference that 25 years ago, it would have been impossible even to imagine that U.S. prestige would have fallen as low as it is now. As he contemplates the 20 years since the end of World War II, the United States has suffered such loss of prestige throughout the world that even the president indicates his surprise. The origin of these problems, the lack of prestige, we know well. It is due to the attempt of the United States to dominate the world. Now, the United States after World War II set in an intelligence operation that ran our country, and they were ill-advised. They took a decision which was disastrous. We handed over the reins to Allen Dulles, the State Department, John Foster Dulles, and the CIA, the Dulles brothers, and Henry Luce, and these kind of people made the decision to arm against what they thought were the communists, and they depleted all the resources and the morality of the things that America had stood and died for it. Now, these are broad sweeping statements, but I feel that William Buckley is the first writer to come out in 6 years and even repeat the story of what Chu Enlai is saying about America. We have other writers every day, Jack Anderson, Max Lerner, James Reston, Walter Lippmann, Mr. Kirkpatrick, Joseph Alsop, Harrison Salisbury. Every night they write and write and write. Every day they have articles in the paper. And not one of them has mentioned the Kennedy assassination. And if they do, they put down the conspiracy as a negative, or they ignore it as a cause for all the problems that they write articles every night about problems in the world today, and they never attribute them to the assassination of John Kennedy or Robert Kennedy or Martin Luther King. And I feel that it's time that they get to the subject. And Mr. Buckley's bringing it up last night, I think is important, because the Buckleys are arch conservatives. I don't agree with their opinions. They're pretty self-centered. They make some broad sweeping statements I don't like. But I've never associated the Buckleys in all my research with any of the assassination teams. And I think the Buckleys would benefit politically. If we were to remove the top people in office that are there now, you'd probably, the only conservative left would be the two Buckleys. You know, I mean, of the top conservatives. And I think Mr. Buckley can be very sure of himself when he talks about the death of John Kennedy in his article, because he's not involved, at least not in my research. And he can, if you take the others and remove them from power, he stands it. Now, I brought the Sputnik, but I'm not going to read it today. The first issue, we've gone over the first issue really carefully. Another issue on what's happening in Dallas goes into Jim Garrison, and it's fascinating. And I should do a whole show on it. But Tom Wicker last night had an article on Nixon's musical chairs, and he's talking about putting Spiro Agnew in as a justice on the Supreme Court. You know, I have said before on these programs that Spiro Agnew should not be vice president of the United States. He passed because he didn't have to be scrutinized. The electoral process is such that if the man running for president says, I want this particular man, he gets in on a package deal. And that is terrible. Remember we talked about May's law, that we should have a law to change the process. And I wrote this to almost every member of Congress in 1970, that a thing like this shouldn't be allowed, because when you elect a justice of the Supreme Court, he has to be approved through committees. Where he's been, what his decisions are, is he fair? And I think that even to entertain the idea that Spiro Agnew be on the Supreme Court, considering his relationship with, again, the CIA and the FBI and the way he came to power, should be very carefully scrutinized in Washington. Now, a group in Texas, the Young American for Freedom, had a convention in Houston, and they decided that they would like to see Agnew be the president rather than Richard Nixon, because Richard Nixon has betrayed them in making overtures to China, and they gave several reasons why they were in favor of Spiro Agnew. Well, Mrs. Mitchell is back in the act again. She had an article in the paper yesterday backing the Young American for Freedom. Now, John Mitchell was campaign manager of Richard Nixon's campaign in 1968. But his wife, Martha, is backing the Young American for Freedom's group who opposed Richard Nixon's re-election. And she is behind a package deal. Young American for Freedom is raising money, and they have a kit to send to men in the hospitals in Vietnam, the GIs. It would be toothpaste, aftershave, lotion, and dominoes. But in the kit, along with that, would be literature from human events, a weekly newsletter published at Battle Line, the American Conservative Union, New Guard, all this literature, William Buckley's National Review, criticizing Richard Nixon. They're to put this in the package with the toothpaste and the shaving lotion. And she is backing this particular group, Young Americans for Freedom. The publications have attacked the president's welfare plans, his trip to China, his wage price freeze, and Mrs. Mitchell sent out 250,000 letters last week in appreciation for Young American for Freedom's work. And she felt that they should have this literature, this far-right literature, in these packages sent to GIs supporting Spiro Agnew and attacking Richard Nixon, the man that her husband helped campaign. Now, John Mitchell and Spiro Agnew are very close. So I'm going to go right now, as much as we can in 1 hour, Gloria, to my research on Young American for Freedom. Because when the Warren Report came out, and I'm holding the Warren Report now, and if you have a pencil, take it down, the hardbound edition, page 292, goes into the investigation of the right-wing group in the Dallas-Fort Worth area to show that they had nothing to do with the assassination of John Kennedy. And that ends on 298. That's 6 pages of the Warren Report rule out the fact that there was a right-wing conspiracy in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. They go into the fact that Oswald did not know General Walker. They go into that literature that was published the day of the assassination in the newspaper. We talked on another show, a big newspaper ad saying, "Welcome, Mr. Kennedy, to Dallas," was published by the American Fact-Finding Committee in the Dallas newspaper the day of the assassination. It was signed by Chairman Bernard Weissman with a P.O. box. The commission went into an investigation of this origin of this ad, and I'll read you page 295. The commission conducted a full investigation into the genesis of this advertisement and the background of those responsible for it. 3 of the 4 men chiefly responsible, Bernard Weissman, William Burley, and Larry Schmidt, served in the U.S. Army in Munich, Germany in 1962. End the quote here. I'm interposing. They do not mention the name Larry Jones at all. There's 4 men. They mentioned 3 of them. The Warren Report goes on. Quotes. This is page 295. Schmidt was the first to leave the service. He settled in Dallas in October 62, became a life insurance salesman, quickly engaged in political activities in pursuit of their objectives they had in Munich. He was affiliated with several organizations and various political writings. Upon their release from the military, Weissman and Burley did not immediately move to Dallas, though they were urged to do so by Schmidt. On October the 1st, 1963, Schmidt wrote Weissman, Adlai Stevenson is scheduled here on the 24th. Kennedy is scheduled on the November 24th. One was to be November, one October. There are to be protests. All these big things are happening now, and if we don't get in right now, we may as well forget it. This is what he wrote to Bernard Weissman. 5 days later, he wrote to Weissman and Burley in New York City and told them to come to Dallas, that their organization that they set up in Munich, Germany is going, and we want you to come right now. Within 10 days, Bernard Weissman and Bill Burley arrived in Dallas, and the 4 men made plans regarding President Kennedy's planned visit to Dallas. Weissman's name was used on the ad to counter charges of anti-Semitism, which were leveled against the conservative groups, and they said it was a fictitious committee that was set up. Now, the commission said they found no evidence of connecting those responsible for the handbill with Lee Harvey Oswald or the assassination. Now, I'm closing the Warren Report, and I'm suggesting if you have a pencil, go to your library and look up Look magazine, dated January 26, 1965. This is 2 years after the assassination of John Kennedy. The article is called A Plot That Flopped by Patricia Swank. And I say that the plot didn't flop. These men do control America, will control the world. And I want you to tell me why the article says that a plot flopped. I will read it to you. It begins, I'm reading a few excerpts from Look magazine, 1965. The Warren Report merely mentioned that Larry Schmidt arrived from Germany, from Munich, in the fall of 62, and later Bernard Weissman and Bill Burley arrived in Dallas, but Oswald didn't know them, and they put an ad in the paper. Look magazine says the following, quotes, at Munich, Germany, in June 1962, a tense young non-com typed out a 6-page timetable for his plot to take control of politics in his homeland. He was Larry Schmidt, a 4th-class specialist in the U.S. Army. He trained a small, disciplined band of soldier conspirators to follow him stateside, and he hoped, he said, to do whatever was necessary to accomplish his goals. Schmidt's weapon was an organization called CUSA, C-U-S-A. The code of it was Conservatism USA, a secret organization put together under the nose of the military security police. He signed up 4 zealots inside the military police and counterintelligence corps. His agents, in constant training for their mission, used Army machinery for their own ends. When a corporal for the U.S. Army headquarters beat up a CUSA man, Schmidt claims the long army of CUSA influence reached up to Heidelberg, got him busted, and shipped out. So the Munich timetable bristled with conspiratorial evidence. They set up secret conversations, U.S. headquarters in Dallas. They would infiltrate the right-wing organizations, non-political groups like the JCs, and take over. They had a business deal called AMBUS that was to AMBUS for American business that would raise money for CUSA, the organization, the secret organization. Their goal was by January 1969 to have a conservative president sitting in the White House. Then Congress would be ruled by conservatives and our job would be done. What happens at that time we're not thinking about, but we'll all be in control. Schmidt arrived in Dallas on schedule. He went right to work for the National Indignation Convention. Now, there's a National Indignation Committee whose headquarters were on Commerce Street, just a few blocks from Ruby, Jack Ruby. These men had foreknowledge of the assassination. They had weapons. They stockpiled weapons for the Minutemen, the National Indignation Committee. This is called the National Indignation Convention. They switched their work to the Young Americans for Freedom. They were still going strong the day that John Kennedy was shot. They had put the notice in the newspaper about Welcome Mr. Kennedy. Look magazine mentioned it. But Schmidt said the Stevenson incident launched him into politics. Still, the Fuhrer over the ad, over the day that Kennedy was killed, it had the black border on. They thought about death. But Schmidt went on in 1965 and said he thought that increased in influence and widened his power base. He got a job with the Dallas ad agency that handles conservative political campaigns, works there as a paid worker. He did a very fine job until the Warren Commission uncovered part of the CUSA plot. Now, the Warren Commission didn't even go into the CUSA plot. They published letters that I'm going to read on the air that have never been read on the air of these men that were marked secret or destroy. The FBI did procure some of these, but it didn't do a thing to stop the men's power. Now, Larry Schmidt said, he says it's a shame that a lot of people, goes on to say, his drive for zeal and power are not inhibited by the restraints many of us take for granted. We expected a showdown between communists and Nazis on the one hand and CUSA on the other. He says, don't misunderstand me. I'm no Oswald or Ruby, and I'd never harm anyone. I'm a sane, rational, patriotic, law-abiding citizen. Larry Schmidt said about himself in 1965, don't understand me. I'm sane, rational, patriotic, law-abiding. End quotes. I'm going back into the testimony when Jack Ruby was interviewed by the Warren Commission and took a polygraph test. Volume 14, page 557. Arlene Specter of the commission staff, a lawyer, said, Mr. Tannehill, do you have any other questions you would like to have asked? Joe Tannehill is a wealthy lawyer in the Southwest who was with Ruby all the time, who was in on the polygraph test. And Tannehill said, I think it has been very, very comprehensive. Jack protested about the ad that was insulting President Kennedy. He protested because he's a 100 patriotic American citizen, and he is still telling the truth. And he's talking about the name on the box that upset him, the Bernard Weissman in that ad that day. And he wanted to do something about that ad because Ruby is a 100% patriotic American citizen, and he would be telling the truth. So Alexander, the police chief in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, said to Ruby, are you a police character? And this for the polygraph test, and Ruby said no. So John Tannehill said, are you a 100% patriotic American citizen? And Alexander, the district attorney, said, are you a law-abiding citizen? And Ruby said yes. And Tannehill said, are you a 100% American patriotic citizen? And Ruby said yes. And he passed the polygraph test. So this is volume 14, page 567. The district attorney in Dallas and the wealthy oilman lawyer are saying to Ruby, are you a law-abiding, patriotic American citizen? And he says yes. So if Ruby can say it under polygraph test and pass the test after everyone seeing him shoot in the police department, a man who was handcuffed. Then Larry Schmidt in 1965 is saying the same words, "Don't understand me." He said, "I'm a sane, rational, patriotic, law-abiding citizen," meaning that they know full well what they're doing. Now back to the Look magazine, before we get to the documents and letters of Larry Schmidt. There was an article on what are his motives to try to take control of the government by 1969 or 72. Larry Schmidt said he had no reason to trust the world. He was born at the age, when he was born, he lived with no mother or father. At the age 9, he learned that mom and dad were an aunt and uncle and were getting a divorce. He went from grandparents' home to unmarried uncles and moved around. And he said, "I was restless, bright, and wanted an identity of my own, so I joined the Army." And he went on tour in Germany. And he got out of the Army and went to the University of Miami, had a bad love affair, went to California, couldn't continue his education, his mind was disturbed. So he went back into the Army because the Army is a wonderful home for people who have no place. They have latent hostility and no place to go. So he went back to the Army. And he said, "I am ready to remake myself. If need be, I'll remake the world." If he could not fit into society, he would make society fit him. He became public relations director of the U.S. Armed Forces Recreation Center in Munich. And he sat in the beer halls in Munich. And he bundled with elements that were into a philosophy of revolt. Then he said came the absolute crusher, the 1961 Bay of Pigs fiasco. And he saw the Bay of Pigs and Kennedy mixed up with this. He said, "I was so disgusted with our government and so humiliated." His German friends teased him. His German girlfriends ridiculed him. And they said to him, "If you don't like the damn world, why don't you change it?" And I said, "My God, that's not a bad idea." And that's when he started CUSA, his organization. He decided then, so he lined up recruits. He lined up Larry Jones, a decoder, a muscular North Carolina extrovert. He took him as his personal bodyguard and chief of security. He got Norman Baker, a company clerk in the military police, who saw the need for money to pay politics. And they dreamed up ambush. And Baker recruited Bernard Weissman, the one Jew in the circle. They had 5 inner circle and 10 outer circle, and they became a visible group known as the Klan. They had influence for other GIs. They fixed passes. They made loans. They got interest. Schmidt, the press agent, ingratiated himself with the publicity-minded commanders and the visiting VRPs, and he would speak at the time of big summit meetings. And he would talk later in 1965 about a summit meeting in April of 1st, 1965, of his group, and the takeover of rightist organizations in America. And he would destroy anybody who would not join. Now, Look magazine said, "We are 5 young men, ambitious, hungry, plotting lives away to change the world. I'm a man of action. I think like a man of action, and I act like a man of thought." Okay, Look magazine went on. Where did he strike first? He settled in Dallas. He got a job with the United Press. He went on to see a conservative by reputation, Dr. Robert Morris. He worked with him. He put his CUSA activities that they planned in Munich, Germany, at these secret meetings with high-up military police, into Young American for Freedom. His brother Bob moved into Dallas, where he was a full-time paid worker for General Walker. Let me end quotes here. Brother Bob was never called as a witness, is not indexed, is never mentioned. His brother Bob, he writes, is a full-time worker for General Walker. Larry Jones came back from Munich with him. Schmidt tried to activate the business by promoting private clubs, nightclubs. Now, this is what Look magazine telling you. I'm going to go into the Warren Commission exhibits, not the witness testimony. None of these men were called as witnesses before the commission. Schmidt's name came to notice at the time that he led 14 student pickets to protest a speech by UN Ambassador Adlai Stevenson. Let me end quotes from Volume 18 to say why we have conspiracy to cross state lines or for students coming in and stirring up trouble. Nobody has mentioned that Larry Schmidt, who originated the attack on Adlai Stevenson in Texas, was not a student. He was in the Army. He got out of the Army, went back in the Army. And he is the instigator of the riot, and they tried to blame the students at Texas. He was the man who instigated and took the publicity. Look magazine goes on to say that he called Bernie Weissman and told him and Bull Burley to come out and to Dallas. It's time to come out, that everything they planned in Germany would come to head in Dallas. Now, it says Burley and Weissman arrived early November. John Birch, Joe Grinnan, raised $1,463 for the ad that was placed against John Kennedy. The ad was paid by 3 members of the Birch Society: Edgar Christie, H.R. Bright, Nelson Bunker Hunt, the son of H.L. Hunt. Schmidt was driving with Grinnan, member of the Birch Society, when the assassination news came over. Schmidt's chapter of the Birch Society in CUSA suddenly had few members in town. Now, Look magazine is telling you that after they thought there'd be a witch hunt for these men after the assassination of John Kennedy, and they had few members in town. They had no members in town except one, and I'll go into him in a minute.
You're listening to Dialogue Assassination.
The group that was called CUSA, that was formed in Munich, Germany, all moved into the Dallas area, and I'm going to read that to you now, how they came into the area and what positions they had at the time of the assassination. The one member of the Dallas community who joined their group that worked with Larry Schmidt was Warren Caroll of the CIA, who writes Lifeline for H.L. Hunt. He was the member of CUSA in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, again, never called as a witness. Now, I read to you as a resume before I go into this other material I'm going to read that Young American for Freedom are sponsoring Spiro Agnew now for President of the United States. Martha Mitchell is behind the organization. A lot of people are behind this organization. I want to show you that what has happened to Young Americans for Freedom, the Warren Report brushes it off totally, doesn't go into any of the material of how this group became infiltrated or who was involved in the Dallas-Fort Worth area at the time of the assassination, who should have been called as witnesses to find out if they had a part in the killing of John Kennedy. And Look magazine, 1965, wrote an article about this group. They picked up information the Warren Commission should have had. Now, in volume 18 of the hearings before the Commission on the assassination of John Kennedy, there were a series of letters that were taken from, I suppose, Bernard Weissman's possessions, because he was the only member of this Munich group that was called as a witness. But the FBI does have a collection of documents and letters and exhibits that they put in, and they routinely publish them. And nobody has publicly analyzed the material that was in these letters. They're just sitting there for you to read if you want to read them. The meetings before the Commission, I mentioned on other shows, there's 15 volumes of witness testimony of what happened regarding the murder of Oswald or John Kennedy. The last 10 volumes, 10 to 26, volume 10 to 26, are almost 1,000 pages each with no table of contents or index of any kind, and they're just hit and miss articles or exhibits, FBI reports, documents, letters confiscated from people who may have been considered to be called as witnesses but who were not called. So I'm going to read to you from volume 18. I can give you the page of each letter. The tone of the boys for the next half hour of what was happening from Munich, Germany, until Dallas, 1963, and see if that Look magazine in 1965 means that these men really did gain what they wanted, because they did have their conservative in office, and now he's stacking the Supreme Court, and we're in worse trouble than ever. One of the letters was sent immediately to Munich, Germany. It was from Larry Schmidt, the first boy to arrive, and he writes to Larry Jones. He's writing now, he says, "Well, gentlemen, we have arrived." He's reporting to Munich, Germany from the Dallas area. He said, "Gentlemen, we have arrived. Remember I said my first correspondence from Dallas would be on the NIC letterhead? NIC will be the National Indignation Committee. Here's the score to date. I arrived in Dallas Sunday night. By 9 in the morning, I was in their office. Corrigan Tower, 17th floor. Frank McGee is out of town." Frank McGee is the man who was in charge of Young Americans for Freedom. He was not at the first meeting. The NIC is run by 3 partners, and he mentions their powerful conservative group. I told them that CUSA wanted to merge with NIC by August of 1963. Now, CUSA is that group of these young men that have a small secret society in Munich, Germany, and he has come into Dallas on Sunday night, and Monday in the morning he says that we will merge with you in August 1963. What do those 10 Munich boys have to do to merge by August 63? This is 1 year later. In the interim now, between now and August 63, we would be made partners. We'd each be paid $125 a week, and each returning partner, as you come back from Europe, would be added to the payroll as soon as you return. Larry, I'm making this offer tongue-in-cheek. We'll contact with NIC long before our original deadline this way. Now, he goes on, Jim Byers was duly impressed. He set up a meeting with Frank McGee for tomorrow. The 3 partners will be there. McGee is obviously the boss. His decision determines my proposition. At this point, I'll say we are in. Okay, now here are the facts on NIC, he says. They are absolutely ignorant and chaotic. They're ripe for a takeover exactly as we planned. And he continues his analysis of NIC. In another letter, November 2nd, 1962, the next day after he's home, he says, Frank McGee finally met with me at his home last night. We conferred privately for 4 hours. CUSA, the German organization, and NIC will merge in the fall of 63, as soon as Bernie and Norman are in Dallas. This is going to be a top-secret merger, not to be discussed outside our movement. We shall help NIC until the merger is effective. Now, the NIC rallies are going to be in Munich, and our CUSA, our organization in Munich, is going to be their cover. They will be conducted by CUSA, those boys in Munich, Germany. We will ship materials, films to you. There will be telephonic arrangements. CUSA in Munich will carry on the rallies like we are going to do in Dallas. In the event that the Army arrests you, Mr. McGee has assured me the right-wing movement, particularly the NIC and John Birch, will leap to your aid with political and legal backing. They're going to be arrested in Munich in case they get too far right-wing. And remember the role that General Walker had in Germany before he was returned. You were to act as a continuity center of NIC in Munich. McGee and I hope to get to Munich ourselves for some of the rallies. I have scored a hit with the office staff. Sunday night I met them. Mr. Warshaw is a nice guy, but a Robert Welch-type radical. He sees communist conspiracy everywhere. Now, I'm going to read you their words. The NIC is considered subversive and controversial and honest movement. Their expenses are about $10,000 a month. McGee travels all the time. He's sincere and dedicated. He's not too bright. He's not ambitious. You know, the other leaders, he says, they're not too brighter. They're amateurish, he said, compared to us. Now, this team is pulling in $10,000 a month. These boys are military men in Germany. They don't have a cent. And they're coming to Texas with their plan of organization, and he's describing them as really amateurish compared to us. Now, we need every man, especially our partners. You get your hardship. Bernie and Norman, you get out and get things ready now. This is in early November 1962. All plans must be in final form by July 63, no later. They are going 1,000% better and faster than I dreamed of, and it's up to you people in Munich now. And tell Mosley when he returns. No jazz, no jive, no slang, all business, no nonsense. I'm serious. I'm building for you people to be Superman, and I don't want your image destroyed, so start your work. And he instructs them, you have to learn your conservatism immediately. Everyone should read Conscience of a Conservative now. You must know conservative philosophy or these people will shoot you down. If we are moving, we have weak people here. We'll get rid of them. And do not add any Negroes to your movement. Now, all along, the gist of the letters is you've got to learn your lingo and don't talk liberal. Now, they're in for a bunch of money. They're going to talk about money. They're going to do a job in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And they talk about the money they're going to get and how they have to treat these idiots, these wealthy oil people, as idiots and children, because this team is going to move into Munich and take over and merge with the oil men. They don't have any money financially, but they have guts. So these are the letters that are going back and forth. He says to all members in Munich, Germany, Larry Schmidt writes a letter, the mission for which we are in charge in Dallas has been accomplished. We are in. Here is the story. Now, Larry Schmidt wrote this letter in February 1963 to Munich, Germany, to the organization that is still stationed there. He says, the mission which I was charged in Dallas has been accomplished, and we are in. And here is the story. The top conservatives in Dallas, the defenders of American liberty, had a party Friday night for young conservatives at the home of Dr. Robert Morris. Now, Dr. Robert Morris is a well-known name in the conservative circles of America, and he lists the people who were at the party. Clyde Moore, the newscaster from KRLD, former public relations man for H.L. Hunt. multimillionaire oil man, Professor Robert Woods from Dallas University. He lists the conservatives are at the party. Dr. Kubek, Professor of Philosophy at Dallas University. Ken Thompson, editorial writer for the Dallas Morning News. He goes into the political top people of Dallas-Fort Worth area. Schmidt said, I got to their home at 9 o'clock in the evening, and they were talking till midnight, and it was nothing but a social gathering. It was just political talk, only politics. There was no business at all. And Mr. Morris said, are you enjoying yourself? And I said, no, I thought I came here for business. Well, let's get to the point. So he introduced me to the group, and the group got together. He said they got together because of me, and I told them what I was after, and I got immediate backing from Morris, Kubik, Woods, and Ellis. And I gave them that hellfire brimstone Baptist bit, and it worked like a charm. And to make a long story short, fellow CUSA, we didn't get everything we got. We got 90% of it. I want to start a new movement, this new organization, and I influence them, and we will use an already existing organization named Young Americans for Freedom because it already has 50,000 members. And quite to my surprise, these people spoke very frankly. We'll use their basic structure of Young Americans for Freedom, and we'll start with the Southwest chapter, and then we'll move out. And we can use Young Americans for Freedom. Eventually, we'll take it over. We'll get us off the ground, and we'll maneuver and take it over. CUSA, the Munich organization, I was flabbergasted, our group, that this came from a mouth not my own, that they would use CUSA. It came from Clyde Moore. And Clyde, baby, I thought you're a man after my own heart. Now, Clyde Moore, I have to remind you again, was the newscaster, public relations man for H.L. Hunt and the oil man. He said, I compromised that we would move slowly, and the Dallas chapter of Young Americans for Freedom was born. You probably can't imagine why I moved to make Clyde Moore the president of our little Young Americans for Freedom. He goes on. Now, to make a long story short, Young American Freedom was born last night, and you will be amazed to learn that that organization will be strictly the same as our own CUSA, C-U-S-A. But we will lose the name CUSA. He's going to go on to say, we met at Ken Thompson's the next day for 4 hours. We drew up the organizations. The officers were to be paid full-time as much as money permits. I'm already getting $125 from National Indignation a week. That's $500 a month. Clyde will be paid immediately. We have 3 officers' jobs still open for when you come to Dallas. For Bernie Weissman, James Mosley, your salary will start at $100 a week. This letter, February the 2nd, continues. Our plans and strategies and tactics of the Southwest Young American Freedom is similar to our CUSA. To be explicit, CUSA is established fact in Dallas now. After meeting for 4 hours, you can catch on to what happens. We are starting a Young American Freedom chapter in Munich. We'll spread them to Stuttgart, Frankfurt, Heidelberg, Berlin, and they will be supported by Young Americans for Freedom in Dallas, and we're going to move fast, and we'll use the same names. We're to lose the name CUSA and use the name. After all, you will get many times your money back when you play your dues for this organization, plus your future, he's telling the boys in Munich. From here on, we are known as YAF. Forget CUSA for now on, because the pay is CUSA, because the pay is in CUSA, really. He means they're going to get the money through CUSA, but they're known as YAF. I have also suggested that after we become powerful, we change our name to Conservatives, USA, and the idea has been approved. Now, he goes on. I'm reading you some of the letters that are in Volume 18 of the exhibits of the Kennedy assassination. All those months in Munich were not wasted. I have kept my end of the bargain. I have met my end. My task in Dallas is now up to the rest of you to carry out yours. I am in, he says. They are expecting you to come to Dallas and play an important role, and if you fail, you only fail yourselves, because YF has connections with the radical right elements. The days of leisure are over. We are established. Now, another letter came across. This is Volume 18, page 848. We got everything we wanted. Frank brought our goals and plans 100%. It saved us the trouble of infiltration. We got everything we intended to get 18 months ahead of schedule. Now, end quotes. I'm going to stop here because it was 18 months from the time of this schedule to when John Kennedy was killed. It was 18 months from the time James Ray left the Missouri jail until Martin Luther King. It was 18 months from the time that a Yemenite was hired in New York City, to kill Richard Nixon, but the plot was foiled that he was to lose his traces and kill Richard Nixon 18 months from that date. And I have all the articles on that assassination attempt. But the man who was to do it was an informer. It was 18 months from the time Charlie Manson left Treasure Island as a convict till he ended up with wanting to start a race war in Los Angeles with that massacre. 18 months is a good time schedule. I don't have 18-month thing on the Sirhan. It was more of a continuous thing. But in these other murders, all of the complication that people can't follow in these murders is an 18-month kind of time. Now, it goes on. He says, one bad thing, though, Frank McGee, he's talking about, is anti-Semitic and anti-Negro. So he's warning them, hide all your talk. So Weiss, he's sending a letter to Germany with instructions, Larry Schmidt, that Weiss can stay with us if he shuts up on his liberal thoughts. If he's a liberal, the word will come out from the mouth of any one of us and we'll be finished, and that's no joke. Remember, a Negro is a nigger, and no kind word about Negroes. Now, end quotes. I have to say that the dialogue, we may not have time to read the whole thing, Gloria, but the discussion is, we're going to do a thing, we're going to make a lot of money, and they're going to be involved in nightclubs, and they're going to buy a lot of nightclubs that were connected with Ruby, and they're going to work at the Republic National Bank, which connects with the CIA money and the foundations and so forth. We'll keep going till time runs out, but in case, I want you to see the kind of letters they're instructing them when you come here. These boys had no political philosophy at all. They wanted to make money, and there was money in Dallas, and they were going to move into town and make their money. And he says, believe me, not one slip up, or the people here will cashier on us fast. Now, he writes on, we will merge, he repeats again, in the fall of 63. Think in terms of 300,000 members of $3 million. McGee is our type of man. He's a big thinker. He is not yet to be completely trusted, but naturally, he expects to use us. The good times are gone. Forget your social life, Monday through Friday. There's work to be done, and let's do it. Now, he writes a letter. There's an arrival of another letter, November 1962, back to Munich, Germany. Bernie, don't allow Cusa to die over there. I don't want to lose any of our members. I expect to see you here in Dallas. Jim Mosley said he'll be here by February the 15th. He better be here or he's finished. I haven't received letters from you. I'm giving you letters of ultimatum. From now on, you have to take orders from me. And he gives them a long list of things. This is like an Army procedure, and if you don't like taking orders, then you shouldn't be in the Army, because someday you may give them too. He writes another letter, January the 4th, 1963. It was great to talk to you on the telephone. This is from Dallas to Munich. You have no idea how I worried was about your safety. Everything in Munich should be going along fine. He says, all great movements. He says, don't worry now about Cusa. This is Larry Schmidt in Dallas, Texas, writing to Munich, Germany, to his group, who will all be in Texas the day of the assassination. All great movements have their periods of discouragement. Truly great movements, their great leaders never gave up. They fought against seemingly overwhelming odds. Cusa is my destiny. I must see it through. I do not feel that Cusa's success depends on whether all the boys in Munich belong or not, but I want big men, big in thought, in action. Give me a half a dozen men and I can conquer the world. Men who change the world for good or evil. We're not small men. He says, like Charlemagne, Bismarck, Washington, Lincoln, Lenin, Stalin, Mao Zedong, Hitler, Mussolini, Nasser, or Kennedy. Each had a single goal for which they met their deaths. They pursued their deaths. This was in January 1963. Kennedy didn't die until November of that year. He already has them in the past tense. Cusa is going to survive, and he ends that letter on that. But he continues with a few more thoughts in that particular letter of January. He says, the world is full of bright, aggressive, ambitious, and unscrupulous young men. And one thing has to be understood. I'm not playing games here in Dallas. I expect you not to play games in Munich. I'm not here in Dallas for my health or because Dallas is a wonderful place. Now, the letter's filled that he's on a high salary, he's making money, he's into clubs. He's not for his health. He's not there for political reasons because he's briefing them on how they're supposed to talk when they arrive. And he says it's not such a great place. So you better discipline yourselves and have a meeting, have an urgent meeting in Munich, have an important meeting, and lay down the orders in preparation for our big meeting. Now, there were money for telephone calls from Texas to Munich and meetings. Another letter goes back and forth. Oh, CUSA lives in Dallas. Someday we will be all-powerful and all-reigning. Close your ranks in Munich. The men that aren't worthy of CUSA shouldn't be in. I, for one, despise being anonymous. Nothing. I choose greatness, immortality, wealth, power, and influence. And Bernie, this is Bernard Weissman he's writing to, I'm going to have these things, whether I go in history book as a great and noble man or a tyrant. I am determined to at least be recorded in the history of our times. I chose to make my attempt at greatness. Where do you men stand? He goes on to say the world is changed by 24 people of a strong stature can change the world. Now, the motive for Oswald killing John Kennedy was supposed to be he wanted to go down to history. Oswald said he was a patsy. The motive for Ruby going in is that he wanted to prove he was a hero to this group of people there. This Larry Schmidt gives a clear-cut motive why he would want to merge in August of 63 with these men, and he is going to have a summit meeting. They use terms of military terms. They use the general, the lieutenant. Their letters are filled with all the military things, and they talk about the command and get, now he writes back, get the Munich branch organized. We're getting ready for action. They refer to a woman who's supposed to come with them. She's supposed a female member of CUSA, and she's supposed to arrive. They get a letter from Bernard Weissman from Germany to the Texas area. An unfortunate incident happened. One of our female friends was refused a security clearance because of her association with men of questionable political views. We are, or so it seems, the only people who could have caused this. This is the type of hurt that can happen to us if we are too openly extreme or associate openly with extremists. Now, this is a letter coming from Germany. This female person was in the Dallas area the day of the assassination. It was very interesting. If she didn't get a security clearance because of being with these men, and these men were in the Dallas-Fort Worth area at the time of the assassination, why didn't the Secret Service have information on them? Why didn't they ever even call them as witnesses? If people over there couldn't get clearances for just being with them, why weren't they interviewed? Now, Bernard Weissman goes on that the Munich situation is amazing, and they're getting very tighter, and they're pulling together. I have page after page here, Gloria. Before the time runs out, I want to get to the very final letters where he urges Bernard Weissman, Larry Schmidt, it's in the fall of 63, and he's urging Bernard Weissman to come to Texas. And he says, our member, Warren Caroll, from the Young Americans for Freedom, is our only other CUSA recruit in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. This is volume 18, page 874. I am executive secretary. He is vice president of Young Americans for Freedom. Warren and I are very close friends and political allies. Of course, he doesn't know much about our CUSA, the Munich organization. We held a strategy conference last Sunday and plotted our course. Warren Caroll, he said, is a conservative who was cleared by the CIA. H.L. Hunt cleared him. He's all right. He used to work for the CIA. He is their member, and he's a lawyer, and he is their member of that CUSA organization in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He writes, Larry took a job. That's Larry Jones arrived in town at the Chrysler Plymouth place. He got Betty, his wife, a job at the first-class lounge bar. Larry and I are about to gain 20% interest in a private club across the street from the apartment. We made arrangements with girlies to work in the Ducharme lounge as hostesses. Warren Caroll, the Ph.D. man, law student, draws up the necessary papers. We're making progress. He says Norman will be arriving soon, and he goes into all the people from the Dallas-Fort Worth area that are going to move into that area before the assassination. And they completely took over Young Americans for Freedom group. He says Warren and Larry, that's Larry Jones, get along beautifully. And he goes into the back. Ken is supposed to arrive in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He'll be there at the time of the assassination. At the time they were corresponding, he was in the Middle East. He will return to Dallas as soon as possible. We're trusting that you and Bill, that's Bill Burley, and Norman Baker, will be back. We need all of you. Let us know where you stand. We have a job to do, a big one. We work 18 hours a day. I can't go into details. You will get information when you arrive here, he said to Bernard Weissman. You will get a week-long briefing when you arrive on what to do. We are not only politically ambitious, we are not the only politically ambitious in the people in the world. There are wealthy, powerful people. We are moving fast, and the city is brimming. This is one of the letters. The city is brimming with intrigue. We can't come on too strong now. We will bide our time. This is July, before the assassination. Don't worry about a thing. The plans are going as well as can be expected, right down to our line and plans. Now, he goes on, is there any reason Bill and Norman can't be here before you? Sheila will be here in August. Ken is arriving in September. That will give you a fine team and a working force. We're building credit like crazy for the day when we need cash. Have you approached Norman? We want to get him into the Republic National Bank. Now, I'm going off from Volume 18 to say that the Republic National Bank was written up in the New York Times as the black money for the CIA. A girl, Connie Trammell, who wanted to work at Ruby's Clubs, was a full-time employee at the Republic National Bank. This whole team banks at the Republic National Bank. He says, we expect to net $400 to $500 a month for our bar deals. We will put AMBUS into order. Now, take obedience from your superiors. You are given an assignment. You know you can't carry out. If you are not given an assignment, you know you cannot carry out. He has the thing. We have a highly disciplined membership. If you don't like taking orders, then don't be in this group. The highest ranking general was once a lieutenant. Now, you see, what I'm trying to do is to show the filtering into the Dallas-Fort Worth area in October '63. Bernard Weissman receives a letter, and Bill Burley from Larry Schmidt. We were successful with smearing the Stevenson arrival. We're heroes of the left. Some call us the stormtroopers. We've made it. Now, he says, all our work in Munich, everything is coming to a head. All of my past years, everything that we planned in Munich, there's no question of any other job or guaranteeing your security. You get here to Dallas. We've come to Dallas. We've got AMBUS and CUSA going. Don't worry about finding jobs. You can filter and get into the group. Come first and filter, learn, become a trusted lieutenant. Well, everything is accomplished. Where are my cohorts? What is good is that all the above can't be done without the bodies. We can't operate from remote control. I carried out my oath. It was a challenge and a sacrifice, and you can be here. He said, we have to produce the bodies and run. He said to Bernard Weissman, it is an honor to your oath. You have to sacrifice for your country and be in Dallas. CUSA is politically set. Pick up the ball and run like hell. Ken and I are going to run the risk. You have guts. You come with us. And this was the gist of the correspondence, Volume 18 of the commission documents. I don't even have time. I just put the pages down, reading one sentence from each page. It corresponds between a group in Munich, Germany, who admitted in 1965 their political ambitions, their motives, never questioned, never arrested, never suspected, all of them in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, a complete military operation. Silenced all this time. It's kind of hard. We could do just 10
These letters
hours.
came from the
Volume 18. They were picked up by the FBI, and the Warren report I read you has 3 pages on a conspiracy of the right wing that there was none. And here the Young American for Freedom is in the news every day, and Martha Mitchell's every day in the news, and they're very strong today, and they've been halted.
Thank you, Mae. We'll see you again next week.
You've been listening to Dialogue. Dialogue is a presentation of the Public Affairs and Special Events Department of KLRB News.
Bye.